On the frozen streets of Chicago's in February 1994, 11 young lives would end in flames over something as simple as a leather jacket. What started as a heated dice game in a basement would spiral into one of the city's most calculated acts of vengeance, leaving families shattered and a community forever scarred by the lengths two brothers would go to reclaim their honor. It's the dead of winter in 1994, and Chicago's South Side is a place where survival isn't guaranteed and respect is the only currency that matters. The temperature hovers in the low 20s, and the wind off Lake Michigan cuts through your clothes like a blade. This is West Englewood, a neighborhood that stretches across roughly 2 square miles, home to 40,000 people, most of them struggling to make it through each day. The area sits like an open wound that never quite healed, bounded by major streets and sprawling toward old commercial buildings that stand like tombstones marking the death of better times. Population density means you're never truly alone, but somehow everyone feels isolated, trapped in a place where the American dream packed its bags and moved to the suburbs decades ago. This is 1994, remember? The Chicago Housing Authority has started tearing down the massive public housing projects that defined the South Side for generations. They call it urban renewal, but the reality is forced displacement. Thousands of families are scattered across neighborhoods, bringing with them gang affiliations, old grudges, and territorial claims that mean nothing in their new surroundings. This displacement has shattered the old gang structures. Those corporate-style organizations that ruled Chicago's streets in the 80s have fractured into dozens of smaller crews. No more hierarchy, no more rules handed down from leaders in prison. Just blocks, corners, and young men willing to die for a patch of concrete that isn't worth dying for. Violence has become expressive rather than instrumental. It's not about money anymore. It's about respect, about reputation, about not letting anyone think you're soft, because soft means dead. Now, let me introduce you to Marcus Anthony Johnson. He's 27 years old that February, though people who know him say he looks older, weathered by years that demanded too much too soon. He stands 6'2" with a lean, wiry build that comes from metabolism and stress rather than gym time. His most distinctive feature is a scar that cuts through his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a bottle that caught him wrong during a fight when he was 16. Every morning, Marcus wakes at 6:15 in the basement apartment he rents on South Hermitage Avenue. He makes instant coffee, never the cheap stuff, and smokes 2 cigarettes on the back steps before heading to his job at an auto repair shop on Ashland Avenue. He's been working there for 4 years, good with his hands, can diagnose an engine problem by sound alone. Marcus lives alone, never married, no kids that he claims. His mother passed from breast cancer in 1989. His father was shot and killed on a street corner in August 1987, caught in crossfire during a dispute that had nothing to do with him. Marcus had been 20 years old when he watched his father bleed out on hot summer pavement, while people stood around taking pictures instead of calling for help. What Marcus values most isn't money or reputation on the streets. It's the code his father taught him. Never let anyone make you look weak. Never back down from disrespect. Never forget where you came from or who raised you, and never let someone take what's yours without consequences. His father left him almost nothing. No inheritance, no property, no college fund. Just one possession, a brown leather jacket from his time in the Army, worn during the final years of the Korean War. The jacket is old, the leather cracked in places, the lining torn. But it's all Marcus has left of the man who raised him to believe that honor means something, even when the world suggests otherwise. By early 1994, Marcus is tired. Tired of the grind at the shop, tired of watching the neighborhood decay, tired of losing friends to bullets or prison or the slow death of crack cocaine. He stayed out of major trouble, kept his head down, worked his job, went home. He's not trying to be a gangster, he just wants to survive. His younger brother Terrell is different. Terrell James Johnson is 23 years old, 5'11", with a stocky, powerful build from years of unloading trucks at a warehouse on the southwest side. Where Marcus is quiet and calculating, Terrell is emotional, reactive, the kind of man who feels everything intensely and shows it. Terrell dropped out of high school in 11th grade, tried to join the Army, but got rejected for a juvenile record he picked up at 16. He has a girlfriend named Shanice, 21, who works at a grocery store. They have plans, vague dreams about maybe getting married, maybe moving somewhere else, anywhere that isn't West Englewood. But Terrell's defining characteristic is his absolute loyalty to his older brother. Marcus raised him after their father died, kept him fed and clothed when their mother was too sick to work. When you hurt Marcus, you hurt Terrell. When you disrespect Marcus, you might as well have spit in Terrell's face. The brothers aren't particularly close in the day-to-day sense. They don't talk about feelings or sit around reminiscing, but they understand each other completely. They share a code that requires no discussion. Now, let me tell you about the other side of this equation. The Ashland crew isn't a gang in the traditional sense. They're a loose collection of young men, teenagers, and 20-somethings who grew up in the blocks around Ashland Avenue between 65th and 71st Streets. No real leadership structure, no colors or hand signs that mean anything beyond their immediate area. Just friends, cousins, guys who knew each other since elementary school, and who hang out together because there isn't much else to do and because safety comes in numbers. Raymond Thomas, everyone calls him Ray Ray, is the crew's unofficial leader at 22 years old. Tall, charismatic, with a smile that can charm grandmothers and intimidate rivals. He'd been a decent basketball player at Englewood High School. Good enough to start on varsity his senior year, but not good enough for college scouts to care. After graduation in 1989, he drifted into the life that claimed so many Southside kids. No job, no prospects, just days spent on corners and nights spent looking for something, anything to break the monotony. Ray Ray isn't a killer, isn't a drug kingpin. He's been arrested twice, once for possession of marijuana, once for retail theft. Both cases dismissed or pleaded down to probation. He still lives with his mother in a 2-bedroom apartment on South Ashland. Helps her with rent when he can, which isn't often. His girlfriend, Kesha Wallace, is 18 and 3 months pregnant with what would have been Ray Ray's first child. They talk about names. For a boy, maybe Raymond Jr. For a girl, maybe Destiny. They'll never get the chance to decide. The crew includes Ray Ray's cousin Antoine Mercer, 24, who actually made it to college. 2 years at a community college downstate studying business before money ran out and he came back home. There's Jerome Little, 21, who just landed a job interview with the city sanitation department, scheduled for February 15th at 9 in the morning, an appointment he'll never make. These aren't hardened criminals. They're kids, really, trapped in a place and time that offers limited options and unlimited ways to fail. They hang out together because that's what you do. They talk big about money and respect and making it out of the neighborhood, but mostly they just pass time, waiting for something to happen that will change everything. The catalyst comes on January 28, 1994, a Friday night so cold that ice forms in perfect geometric patterns on car windows. The temperature has dropped to 8 degrees by midnight. A group of 8 crew members, including Ray Ray, gather in the basement of an abandoned building on Ashland Avenue, the same building where they'll be gathering 2 weeks later for a very different reason. They're playing dice, betting money nobody can afford to lose on the roll of worn plastic cubes that decide everything. Marcus Johnson shows up around 11:30. Not part of the crew, but tolerated because he grew up in the area. Because everyone knows his reputation as someone who doesn't start trouble but can finish it if pressed. He's been invited by his younger brother Terrell, who knows some of these guys from school. Marcus wears his father's leather jacket against the bitter cold. Inside the basement, a space heater glows orange, fighting a losing battle against Chicago winter. The game goes bad around 1:15 in the morning. Marcus is up about $60, which feels like a fortune. Ray is down more than he should be, drinking cheap liquor that sharpens his edges instead of smoothing them. Words are exchanged. Marcus accuses Ray of trying to cheat on a roll. Ray laughs, says something about Marcus being too serious, maybe mentions something about the jacket, about Marcus wearing his dead daddy's coat like some kind of shrine. Marcus stands up, says something quiet that nobody quite hears, starts to leave. And that's when Ray, emboldened by liquor and an audience, grabs the leather jacket off Marcus's shoulders as he walks toward the stairs. He holds it up like a trophy, says something about keeping it as payment for disrespecting him in front of his crew. The room goes silent. Everyone understands they're watching something dangerous unfold. Terrell steps forward, ready to turn this into a fight right there in that cramped basement. But Marcus puts his hand on his brother's shoulder, shakes his head, looks at Ray for a long moment, then walks up the stairs and out into the 8-degree night without his father's jacket, without another word. Terrell follows, confused, angry, ready to go back down there and take the jacket by force. But Marcus just keeps walking, his breath visible in the freezing air, his footsteps crunching on ice-covered sidewalk. Finally, 3 blocks later, he stops, turns to his brother. His face shows nothing. No anger, no fear, no emotion at all. "Not tonight," Marcus says quietly, "but we're getting it back. And they're going to learn what it costs to take what ain't theirs." What Ray and the Ashland crew don't know is that the jacket they've taken isn't just leather and thread. It's the only thing Marcus has left of the man who taught him that your word is your bond, that respect is currency more valuable than money, and that when someone crosses certain lines, there's a debt that has to be paid. They don't know that Marcus Johnson never forgets anything, that he'd inherited his father's patience along with his coat, that he can wait, can plan, can turn cold fury into calculated action. And they definitely don't know that in exactly 17 days, on Valentine's Day, 1994, Marcus and his brother will make them pay for that moment of disrespect in a way that will shock even Chicago's violence-hardened South Side. The week after the dice game incident moves slowly for Marcus Johnson. Each day bleeds into the next with the weight of unfinished business pressing down on his chest like a physical thing. He goes to work at the auto repair shop every morning, arrives on time, does his job with the same methodical precision he applies to everything. Changes oil, replaces brake pads, diagnoses transmission problems. But his mind is somewhere else, replaying that moment in the basement over and over. His boss notices something is off. On Thursday afternoon, he finds Marcus standing motionless in the garage bay, staring at nothing, a wrench in his hand. "You good, Marcus?" the old man asks. Marcus blinks, comes back from wherever his mind had gone. "Yeah, I'm good. You sure? Because you've been standing there holding that wrench for 5 minutes without moving." Marcus looks down at his hand like he'd forgotten it was there. Just thinking about something. His boss studies him for a long moment. The old man has seen enough in his 63 years to recognize when someone is carrying violence around inside them, nurturing it, letting it grow. "Whatever you're thinking about doing," he says quietly, "think twice, then think a third time. Prison ain't worth it." Marcus nods, says nothing, goes back to work on the Chevy in front of him. but the words don't change anything. Some decisions get made in places deeper than thought, in the part of you that calculates debts and consequences and decides what you're willing to pay. That Sunday, Marcus takes his grandmother to church like he's been doing every other week since his mother died. Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church on 71st Street, a brick building that has survived riots and white flight and decades of neighborhood decay through sheer stubborn faith. His grandmother, Dorothy Johnson, is 74 years old, barely 5 feet tall, with hands twisted from arthritis and a mind sharp as broken glass. After service, they sit in her kitchen, the same apartment where Marcus grew up, where his father grew up before him. The kitchen smells like collard greens and cornbread, smells that carry memory in them, that make Marcus feel 8 years old again. "You've been quiet, baby," she says, setting a plate in front of him. "Something weighing on your mind." Marcus eats slowly, buying time. The greens taste like they always have. Perfect, seasoned just right. "Just work, Grandma. Always something broke that needs fixing." She looks at him the way grandmothers do, the look that sees through lies to the truth underneath. "You and your brother been spending a lot of time together lately." Terrell came by Wednesday, didn't say much, just sat right where you're sitting now, looking like he was carrying the weight of the world. "We're fine, just family stuff." Dorothy reaches across the table, puts her twisted hand on top of his. Her skin is paper thin, spotted with age. "Your daddy was a good man, but he had a hard streak in him. Wouldn't back down from nothing. Got him killed." She squeezes his hand. "You got that same streak, Marcus. I can see it. Whatever's happening, whatever someone did to you, ask yourself if it's worth losing everything." Marcus looks at his grandmother, this woman who'd buried her husband, buried her son, and was strong enough to keep living anyway. He wants to tell her about the jacket, about the disrespect, about how some things demand an answer. But what could he say that would make sense? "I love you, Grandma. You know that, right?" She studies his face for a long moment. "I know, baby, I know." That's Sunday. On Monday, everything starts to change. Marcus begins his preparation not with weapons, but with information. For the next week, he moves through West Englewood like a ghost, watching, learning, mapping out the Ashland cruise patterns with the same attention to detail he brings to engine work. He knows Ray and his crew gather at the abandoned building on Ashland Avenue most nights, the same basement where they'd played dice, where the jacket had been taken. The building is a 3-story structure that should have been condemned years ago. Windows boarded up, front door hanging loose on rusted hinges. The city cut power to the building back in 1991, but somehow the crew has rigged up electricity, probably tapping into lines from a neighboring building. On Tuesday night, Marcus walks past the building around 11, counts 6 people going inside, including Ray. Wednesday, same time, 8. Thursday, 7. Friday, 9. They have a pattern. They show up between 10:30 and 11, stay until 2 or 3 in the morning, doing whatever young men with no jobs and no future do to kill time. Marcus notes something else. The building has 2 exits. Front door on Ashland Avenue, back door opening into an alley. Both doors open outward, old Chicago fire code designed to let people escape quickly in an emergency. The windows on the ground floor boarded solid, but the second and third floor windows are broken out. Just empty frames. Metal security grates cover the ground floor windows from inside. Another obstacle to anyone trying to get out in a hurry. On Saturday, Marcus drives to a hardware store on Western Avenue, 3 miles from the neighborhood, far enough that nobody will recognize him. He buys 3 heavy-duty chains, the kind used to secure motorcycles or close industrial gates. Each chain 6 feet long, thick links that would take bolt cutters to break. $47 for all three. He pays cash, keeps the receipt in his pocket. At a second store, he buys 4 padlocks, the good kind, brass cylinders with hardened steel shackles, another $32. At a gas station on Archer Avenue, Marcus fills 5 red plastic gasoline cans, the 5-gallon size. The attendant doesn't ask questions. 89 cents per gallon, paid cash. Back in his apartment, Marcus spreads out a map of the neighborhood on his kitchen table, marks the building's location with a red X, marks escape routes, marks where police stations are located. The nearest is 6 blocks away. Response time probably 5 to 8 minutes, depending on other calls. He marks hospitals, fire stations, engine company, 61 on 63rd Street, about 7 blocks away, while Marcus plans his careful choreography of violence. Terrell struggles with doubt that comes in waves, unpredictable and overwhelming. On Wednesday night, Shanice corners him in their apartment, her eyes red from crying. "Where you been going every night?" she asks. "And don't lie to me, Terrell. I know when you lying." Terrell sits on the edge of their bed, head in his hands. The apartment is small, just a studio really, but they'd made it home. Pictures on the wall, dishes in the sink, a life they'd built together, fragile and imperfect. "Just helping Marcus with something," he says. "With what? What could Marcus need help with at midnight that's got you acting like you're already in prison?" Terrell looks up at her. Shanice is beautiful, always had been, deserves better than this, better than him, better than a life spent worrying whether her man would come home or end up dead in some alley. Some guys disrespected him, took something that belonged to our father. We're getting it back. Getting it back how? Terrell doesn't answer. Shanice sits down next to him, takes his hand. "Whatever Marcus is planning, you don't have to be part of it. You always talking about getting out of here, about moving somewhere better. This ain't the way, baby. This is the way you stay trapped here forever." He knows she's right. Knows it in every part of him that's still rational, still capable of seeing consequences beyond the immediate need for revenge. But there's another part of him, louder, more insistent, that remembers his father bleeding out while strangers took pictures. That remembers his brother raising him when their mother couldn't. That remembers what loyalty means when everything else is stripped away. "I can't let him do this alone," Terrell says quietly. "He's my brother." Shanice pulls her hand away. "Then I guess you made your choice?" She doesn't leave, has nowhere to go, but something breaks between them that night, some trust that might never be repaired. On Sunday night, February 13th, around 11:30, Marcus and Terrell sit at their grandmother's kitchen table. The house is quiet, Dorothy asleep upstairs, the radiator hissing and clanking like it's been doing for 40 years. On the table between them, 2 sets of work gloves, 3 chains, 4 padlocks, and keys to a borrowed car. Neither brother has said much all evening. They'd watched television with their grandmother, ate dinner, helped her wash dishes, normal Sunday routine. But both of them know this might be the last normal Sunday they'll ever have. "You sure about this?" Terrell asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus looks at his brother, really looks at him, maybe seeing him clearly for the first time in weeks. Terrell is 23, but looks younger. His face still holds traces of the kid Marcus had raised. He has a girlfriend who loves him, has a job, has a chance, slim but real, at something better than this neighborhood, this life, this cycle of violence and retaliation. "You don't have to be there," Marcus says. "I can do this alone." "That ain't what I asked. I asked if you're sure." Marcus is quiet for a long moment. Is he sure? In the sense of knowing it's right, knowing it's justified, knowing that disrespect demands an answer, yes, he's sure. But in the sense of understanding consequences, of accepting that tomorrow he might be dead or in prison for the rest of his life, of knowing that what he's about to do will destroy more than just his enemies. In that sense, no. He isn't sure at all. They took Dad's jacket, Marcus says finally. They laughed about it. They made us walk away, looking weak. So we go there tomorrow. We take it back. We beat their asses if we have to. But this, Terrell gestures at the chains and locks on the table. This is something else, man. This is something we can't take back. I know. You know what Shanice said? She said I got a choice. Said I can choose to be part of whatever you planning, or I can choose a future. She's right, Marcus says. You should choose the future, but you ain't choosing that. No. Why not? Marcus stands up, walks to the kitchen window, looks out at the dark street. A few streetlights still work, casting yellow pools on cracked pavement. A car drives by, boss thumping. Somewhere a dog barks. Same sounds, same sights, same neighborhood that swallowed his father, his mother, most of the people he'd known growing up. Because I'm tired, Marcus says. Tired of being disrespected. Tired of letting people take what's mine? Tired of being quiet and calm and doing the right thing while everything falls apart anyway. Dad taught us, you don't let people punk you. Said that was the only rule that mattered. You stand up, you hit back, you show them there's consequences. Dad also got killed standing up. I know. They sit in silence for another minute. Then Terrell reaches across the table, picks up one set of work gloves, puts them in his pocket. If you're doing this, I'm there, he says. That's the only choice I got. Marcus wants to argue, wants to send his brother away, wants to protect him the way he's been protecting him since their father died. But he knows Terrell, knows that stubborn loyalty runs deeper than logic, deeper than self-preservation. The Johnson brothers go together, or not at all. At 11:47, they leave their grandmother's house. Marcus kisses her forehead while she sleeps, whispers something she doesn't hear. Downstairs, they load the chains and gasoline cans into a borrowed car's trunk, careful and methodical. The night is cold, 17 degrees, the kind of cold that makes the air feel solid. Their breath comes out in white clouds, dissipating quickly. They sit in the car for a moment before starting the engine. Marcus's hands on the steering wheel, Terrell's hands in his lap. Brothers separated by 4 years and a lifetime of shared history. Their father's death, their mother's slow decline, the neighborhood that raised them and trapped them in equal measure. Last chance to walk away, Marcus says. Terrell thinks about Shanice, about the apartment they share, about the life they'd talked about building somewhere far from here. Then he thinks about his brother, about loyalty, about the code their father had taught them before a bullet ended his ability to teach anything. Valentine's Day tomorrow, Terrell says. Everybody going to be focused on their girls, buying flowers and cards. Nobody's going to be paying attention to us. Marcus nods, turns the key. The engine catches, rumbles to life. He pulls away from the curb, slowly, carefully, like a man with all the time in the world. 10:47 Monday night, February 14th, 1994. Valentine's Day. Temperature has dropped to 19 degrees, the kind of cold that turns exhaled breath into instant fog and makes exposed skin ache within seconds. The streets of West Englewood are mostly empty. People stay inside on nights like this, huddled around space heaters and radiators that fight losing battles against Chicago winter. Marcus sits behind the wheel, parked half a block from the abandoned building. Engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel with the same calm precision he brings to engine work at the shop. Through the windshield, he can see the building's front entrance, the door hanging crooked on rusted hinges, yellow light visible through gaps in the boarded windows where the Ashland crew has rigged their illegal electricity. He'd expected his hands to shake, expected fear or maybe doubt at this final moment. Instead, he feels something else entirely. A cold, empty clarity, like he's watching himself from outside his body, observing this version of Marcus Johnson, the one about to become something irreversible, as if he were a stranger performing a role that had been written long ago. Terrell sits in the passenger seat, silent, breathing visible in the frigid air inside the car. His younger brother's hands are clenched into fists, knuckles white even in the dim light from street lamps. Marcus can feel Terrell's fear, his doubt, his desperate hope that maybe they'll turn around, drive away, find some other way to settle this debt. "Last chance to walk away," Marcus says quietly. "You can get out right now. Take the train home. I won't hold it against you." Terrell looks at his brother, really looks at him, maybe for the first time, seeing the emptiness that has settled into Marcus's eyes over the past 2 weeks. "You really going to do this over a jacket? It was never about the jacket." Marcus's voice is flat, emotionless. "It's about them thinking they can disrespect us and walk away laughing. They're going to die, Marcus. All of them." "I know." A long moment of silence. The radiator in a nearby building hisses and clanks. Somewhere a dog barks twice, then goes quiet. Life continuing its normal patterns while two brothers sit in a cold car calculating murder. "Then I'm with you," Terrell says finally. "All the way." Marcus nods once, checks his watch. 10:52. Through weeks of surveillance, he knows the pattern. Ray and his crew will be inside by now, probably 8 or 9 of them. Maybe more on Valentine's Day since nobody has girlfriends worth staying home for. They'll be in the basement where the space heater glows, playing cards or dice, drinking cheap liquor, talking about money they don't have and dreams that will die tonight. At 10:58, Marcus and Terrell climb out of the car. The cold hits immediately, brutal and unforgiving. They move to the trunk, open it carefully to minimize sound. Inside, 3 heavy chains, 4 padlocks, 5 red gasoline cans, 2 pairs of work gloves. Marcus hands 1 pair to Terrell. They pull them on in silence. They carry the chains first. Marcus takes the front entrance, Terrell the back alley door. The plan is simple, rehearsed mentally 100 times. Wrap the chains through the door handles and around nearby structural supports. Lock them with the padlocks. Make exit impossible. Then the gasoline, then the match. 11:04. Marcus approaches the front door, chain coiled in his gloved hands. Music drifts from inside, something with heavy bass, too muffled to identify. Laughter. Voices raised in mock argument about a card game. Normal sounds of young men passing time, completely unaware that their time is running out. He wraps the chain through the door handle, pulls it tight around a metal support beam that once held the building's front awning. The chain rattles slightly, too loud in the quiet night. Marcus freezes, listening. The music continues. Nobody heard. He loops the chain twice more, then secures it with a padlock, tests it. The door won't open more than 2 inches now, not without bolt cutters. Around back, Terrell does the same with the alley door. Marcus can picture his brother's hand shaking, can imagine the war happening inside Terrell's head. Loyalty versus survival, brotherhood versus conscience. But Terrell is a Johnson. When the choice comes down to family or fear, there's no real choice at all. 11:11. Both brothers meet at the car. Neither speaks. They retrieve the gasoline cans, 2 for Terrell, 3 for Marcus, carry them to the building's perimeter. The ground floor is concrete, but decades of decay have created cracks and gaps where gasoline can seep through to the basement level. Marcus unscrews the first can's cap. The smell hits immediately, sharp, chemical, unmistakable. He pours slowly, methodically, creating a perimeter around the building's foundation. The liquid gurgles from the can, splashes against concrete and dead weeds, pools in cracks. One can, then another, then a third. Terrell works the backside of the building, his movements faster, more erratic. Marcus can sense his brother's panic building, the reality of what they're doing finally settling in with its full weight. But Terrell keeps pouring. The gasoline traces dark patterns on cold concrete, glistening under yellow streetlight. 11:23. They've emptied all 5 cans. The building's foundation is surrounded by a ring of fuel soaked into every crack and crevice. The smell is overwhelming now, a toxic cloud that makes both brothers' eyes water. Inside, the music continues. Nobody has noticed. Nobody has looked outside to see 2 men pouring death around their sanctuary. Marcus stands at the front entrance, match in hand, one small stick of wood and phosphorus. The difference between thought and action, between planning and execution, between being Marcus Johnson, auto mechanic, and becoming Marcus Johnson, mass murderer. He thinks about his father, about the code they'd lived by, about respect and consequences and what it meant to be a man who didn't let anyone make him look weak. He thinks about his grandmother's words. Ask yourself if it's worth losing everything. Is it worth it? Marcus strikes the match. The flame is tiny at first, dancing in the cold air. He holds it for a moment, watching it burn down toward his gloved fingers. Still time to blow it out, still time to turn around, go home, let this grudge die the way most grudges die, slowly, painfully, but without bloodshed. But Ray had laughed, had taken the jacket like it was nothing, had made Marcus walk away looking weak in front of people who only respected strength. Marcus drops the match. 11:27. The gasoline ignites with a sound like the world inhaling, a soft whoosh that becomes a roar within seconds. Flames race along the perimeter, following the fuel trail, climbing walls, finding gaps and cracks to pour through. Orange light blooms in the darkness, casting wild shadows, turning cold night into hellish day. Inside the building, the first scream comes at 11:28. Marcus and Terrell stand across the street watching their work unfold. The fire spreads faster than Marcus had imagined, much faster. Within 90 seconds, the entire ground floor is engulfed, flames visible through every gap in the boarded windows. Smoke pours from cracks, thick and black and toxic. The screaming intensifies. Multiple voices now, panicked, overlapping. Someone tries the front door. Marcus can see it straining against the chains, can hear metal rattling, but the chains hold. The door opens 2 inches, no more. Just enough to see faces pressed against the gap, eyes wide with terror, mouths open, screaming words that get lost in the roar of fire. "Oh God," Terrell whispers. "Oh Jesus Christ, what did we do?" Marcus says nothing. Watches, feels nothing. The void inside him has become absolute. 11:33. A window on the second floor explodes outward, glass raining down onto the sidewalk. A figure appears in the frame, a young woman, desperate. She climbs onto the windowsill, flames behind her, 25-foot drop below her. For 3 seconds she stands there, silhouetted against the inferno, calculating impossible odds. She jumps. The impact is immediate and final. Her body hits concrete with a sound that will haunt Terrell for the rest of his life. A wet, heavy thud that means bones breaking, organs rupturing, life ending. But she's luckier than the ones still inside. 11:37. On the 3rd floor, 3 crew members have retreated as high as they can go, away from flames that climb stairs like living things, consuming wood and drywall and old paint. They break out windows with their fists, try to breathe air that's slightly less toxic. One of them manages to get his upper body through a window frame. He looks down, sees the body on the sidewalk, sees Marcus and Terrell standing across the street watching. "Help us!" he screams, his voice raw from smoke inhalation. "Please, call the fire department. We're dying." Marcus looks up at him. Their eyes meet across the distance. The young man sees something in Marcus's face that makes him understand. This isn't an accident. This is deliberate. Someone has decided they should die. "Why?" he screams. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus doesn't answer. The question doesn't deserve an answer. Ray would know why. That's enough. Flames reach the 3rd floor at 11:41. The figure pulls back inside, disappearing into smoke and fire. His screams continue for another 37 seconds, then stop. While the building burns, 2 blocks away a corner store owner is closing up for the night, counting the day's receipts. She hums a song she heard on the radio that morning, thinking about her daughter's birthday party coming up on Saturday. Through her store window, she can see orange light reflected on buildings, can smell smoke carried on the wind. She thinks maybe someone is burning trash in an alley. Doesn't think much of it. In West Englewood, you learn not to ask too many questions about strange things happening at night. At 11:43, another figure reaches a 2nd-floor window on the building's east side. 19 years old, 3 months from high school graduation. He makes it through the window, grips the ledge, tries to lower himself down to reduce the drop. His hands, slick with sweat and soot, slip. He falls the full 20 feet, hits the alley pavement feet first. Both legs shatter on impact, the sound like branches snapping. He lies there screaming, unable to move, both femurs compound fractured with bone protruding through skin. Above him, flames roar from the window he just escaped. He'll survive. He'll be the only one, but the legs will never heal right. He'll walk with a cane for the rest of his life. Constant pain, constant reminder of Valentine's Day, 1994. 11:47. Ray. Thomas finds himself trapped in the basement. The fire started above, but smoke and heat descend with merciless efficiency. The space heater that kept them warm is now an irony. They'll die from heat, from flames, from their lungs filling with superheated air and toxic chemicals. Ray thinks about his mother, about his girlfriend, and the baby he'll never meet, about the leather jacket hanging in his bedroom that he took as a joke, as a power move, as something stupid that seemed important 2 weeks ago. He understands now. Marcus did this. Had to be Marcus. Nobody else had reason. Ray had crossed a line without realizing it, had taken something that mattered in ways he hadn't understood. And now, the price is being paid in full. 7 other crew members crowd around Ray in the basement. The smoke is thick enough to cut, black and oily and poisonous. They can't see each other anymore, can only hear coughing, crying, prayers to a God who isn't answering tonight. "I'm sorry," Ray says to no one in particular, his voice barely audible over the fire's roar. "I'm sorry for whatever I did." But sorry doesn't matter. Debt has been calculated, and blood is the only currency accepted. At 11:52, the building's structural integrity fails. The fire has burned hot enough, long enough to weaken support beams that have stood since the 1940s. The 3rd floor collapses into the 2nd. The 2nd floor collapses into the 1st. Everything falls into the basement where 8 people are trapped, crushing them under thousands of pounds of burning debris. The screaming stops. Marcus watches the collapse, watches the building transform from a structure into a pile. flames shooting 50 feet into the air, sparks carried on wind like fireflies dancing in hell. He feels Terrell beside him, feels his brother shaking, hears him crying. "We gotta go," Terrell says, his voice broken. "Marcus, we gotta go right now." Right. But Marcus can't move. He stands there watching his work, watching 11 lives end because of a leather jacket and a code his father taught him, and a need for respect that metastasized into murder. Somewhere in that fire is the jacket itself, burning along with everything else, the leather cracking and blackening and turning to ash. Had it been worth it? Marcus doesn't know, can't know. The question assumes there's a scale where these things can be measured. Respect versus lives, honor versus humanity. But there's no scale. There's only fire and death, and the understanding that he's crossed into territory from which there's no return. At 11:56, sirens finally cut through the night. Fire engines from the nearest station, 7 blocks away. Someone called it in, probably the store owner or someone else who saw the orange glow against the night sky. The response time is actually good by Southside standards, but it doesn't matter. Everyone inside is already dead or dying. "Now," Marcus says quietly, "now we go." They walk back to their car, moving quickly but not running. Running draws attention. Marcus starts the engine, pulls away from the curb with careful deliberation, turns south on Ashland Avenue, away from the approaching sirens. In his rearview mirror, the burning building lights up the night like a second sun, flames visible for miles. Terrell is hunched in the passenger seat, face in his hands, shoulders shaking. "What did we do, Marcus? What did we do?" Marcus drives in silence. What could he say? That it was justice, that it was necessary, that Ray and his crew brought this on themselves by disrespecting the wrong man. All of those things are true, and none of them matter. They've eliminated 11 people. 11 lives ended, 11 families destroyed. And for what? A jacket, a principle, a code that demanded blood for blood, respect for respect, death for disrespect. They reach Marcus's apartment at 12:14. Valentine's Day is over. The day after has begun. Inside the apartment, Marcus and Terrell strip off their clothes, put everything in a garbage bag. The work gloves, the jackets they wore, everything that might carry gasoline residue or smoke smell. Marcus wants to burn it all, but that seems like tempting fate. He's created enough fire for one lifetime. They shower. Marcus goes first, standing under hot water until it runs cold, watching gasoline residue swirl down the drain, along with any claim to being a decent human being. When he closes his eyes, he sees faces at the window, hears screaming, sees that young woman jumping from the second floor. Terrell showers next. Marcus hears him crying behind the bathroom door, hears him getting sick, throwing up until nothing comes out but bile and guilt. At 1:30, they sit in Marcus's kitchen. Neither has spoken in over an hour. The television is on, some late-night talk show where the audience laughs at jokes neither brother can hear. The sound is just background noise, static to fill the terrible silence between them. "They're going to know it was us," Terrell says finally. "Someone saw us. Someone had to." "I know. So what do we do?" Marcus looks at his brother. Terrell is 23, but looks younger now. Looks like the kid Marcus raised after their father died. Looks scared and small and broken. "We wait," Marcus says. "We wait for them to come. And then we face what we did." 6:47 the next morning. When firefighters finally control the blaze enough to enter the building, they discover remains that will take days to identify, families that will never recover, and a community that will carry the scar of the Valentine's Day, 1994, forever. Firefighter Michael O'Donnell has been fighting fires for 21 years, has pulled bodies from house fires before, usually one, maybe two victims. He's seen burn victims, knows what fire does to human flesh, has learned to compartmentalize the horror so he can do his job. But when he enters what had been the basement, when his flashlight beam cuts through the smoke and settles on what the building collapse created, a mass grave of charred debris and human remains so intermingled it's impossible to tell where one body ends and another begins. Michael stands frozen for 30 seconds that feel like hours. Then he backs out of the building, walks 20 feet away, pulls off his helmet and breathing apparatus, and vomits onto the frozen sidewalk. "How many?" his captain asks when Michael finally can speak. "I don't know. 8, maybe 10, maybe more." He can't finish the sentence. Can't find words for what he's seen. By 8:30, the scene is crawling with personnel. Chicago Police Department homicide detectives, fire investigators, medical examiner staff preparing body bags, though they'll need to wait hours more for the structure to cool enough for safe recovery operations. Detective Raymond Walsh arrives at 9:15. 19 years with the department, has investigated gang shootings, domestic murders, robbery killings. He's seen Chicago's violence in most of its variations, but he's never seen anything quite like this. The fire investigator meets Walsh at the perimeter, her face grim. "Definitely arson," she says without preamble. "We found evidence of accelerant, gasoline probably, poured around the building's foundation. Both exits were chained and padlocked from the outside. This wasn't an accident. Someone locked these people in and burned them alive." Walsh feels his stomach tighten. How many victims? Won't know for certain until full recovery and analysis, but based on initial assessment, at least 10, possibly 11 or 12. Jesus Christ! There's one survivor. 19-year-old male jumped from a second-floor window, both legs shattered. He's at Stroger Hospital in critical condition. He conscious? Can he talk? Sedated for pain. But when he was conscious in the ambulance, he kept saying two names, Marcus and Terrell. While Walsh processes the crime scene, 2 miles away, Dorothy Johnson is making breakfast for her grandsons like she does most Tuesday mornings. Eggs and toast, coffee that could wake the dead. The kitchen smells like home, like safety, like the life she's built over 74 years in this neighborhood. Marcus and Terrell sit at her table, neither eating, both looking like they haven't slept, which they haven't. Dorothy can see it in their eyes, something hollow, something broken. She's seen that look before, on her son's face the week before he got shot in 1987. The look of men who've crossed into territory they can't come back from. "You boys need to tell me what's wrong," she says, setting plates in front of them. Marcus looks at his grandmother, wants to tell her everything, wants to confess, to explain, to hear her say it will be okay, even though it never will be. But the words won't come. "Just tired, Grandma," he says quietly. Dorothy sits down across from them, her arthritis-twisted hands wrapped around her coffee mug. "The news this morning said there was a fire on Ashland, said people died, said it was arson." Neither brother speaks. "Marcus Anthony Johnson," Dorothy says, her voice sharp with the authority that comes from raising generations. "Look at me." Marcus meets her eyes. "Did you have something to do with that fire?" The question hangs in the air like smoke. Marcus wants to lie, wants to protect her from the knowledge of what he's become, but he's never been able to lie to his grandmother. "Yes, ma'am," he says quietly. Dorothy's face doesn't change expression, but tears start rolling down her weathered cheeks. "How many people?" "They're saying 11. She closes her eyes, sits there for a long moment, crying silently. When she opens her eyes again, they're red but clear. "Your father taught you to stand up for yourself, to never let anyone disrespect you, but he never taught you to be a murderer. They took his jacket, Grandma. They laughed about it. So you burned them alive? 11 people over a jacket? Her voice breaks on the last word. Terrell is crying now, too, face in his hands. We didn't mean for it to be like that. We just wanted, I don't know what we wanted, but not this. Not this. Then what did you expect? Dorothy's voice is sharp with grief and fury. You chain the doors and light a fire and think people are just going to walk away. You committed murder, both of you. Not in self-defense, not in a fight. You planned it. You executed it. You killed children. They weren't children, Marcus says. 19 years old is a child. 18 years old is a child. One of those girls was pregnant. Dorothy stands up, shaking with rage and sorrow. You took a woman's unborn baby. You took mother's sons. You destroyed families who did nothing but exist in the same neighborhood as you. By noon Tuesday, Detective Walsh has established a timeline. The fire was reported at 11:34 Monday night, Valentine's Day. First engine on scene at 11:41 found the building fully engulfed. Both exits chained. Multiple witnesses reported seeing 2 men near the building around 11, though descriptions are vague. The survivor has regained consciousness. Through a haze of morphine and trauma, he tells investigators what he remembers. Basement gathering. Suddenly smoke and fire. Exits blocked. Everyone panicking. He made it to a second-floor window, jumped, remembered hitting the ground. Nothing after that until he woke in the hospital. But he remembers the names, Marcus and Terrell. Had heard them mentioned at the dice game 2 weeks ago when that jacket got taken. Had heard someone say the Johnson brothers were angry, that Marcus was the kind of guy who didn't forget anything. Walsh runs the names through the system. Marcus Anthony Johnson, 27, address on South Hermitage. 1 prior arrest, aggravated assault at age 17, charges dropped. Works at an auto repair shop on Ashland. Terrell James Johnson, 23, same address. Juvenile record sealed, works at a warehouse on the southwest side. By 2 in the afternoon, Walsh has established motive. Witnesses from the neighborhood tell the same story. Ray Thomas and his crew had taken Marcus Johnson's leather jacket during a dice game 2 weeks ago. Some kind of disrespect situation. Marcus had walked away that night, hadn't caused trouble, but people said he had that look. The quiet kind of anger that doesn't go away, just goes underground. 11 people dead over a jacket, Walsh says to his partner as they sit in an unmarked car outside Marcus's apartment building, waiting for backup. The arrest happens at 3:17 Tuesday afternoon, less than 16 hours after the fire. 8 officers approach the apartment with body armor and weapons drawn, expecting resistance, expecting maybe a shootout to end it all. What they find is Marcus and Terrell Johnson sitting at their grandmother's kitchen table, unarmed, hands visible on the table in front of them. Dorothy Johnson stands in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, looking 10 years older than she had that morning. Marcus Anthony Johnson, Terrell James Johnson, Walsh says, his weapon trained on Marcus. You're under arrest for 11 counts of first-degree murder and aggravated arson. Stand up slowly. Keep your hands where we can see them. Marcus stands. His movements are slow, deliberate, calm, like he's been expecting this. Like some part of him is relieved it's finally over. We're not going to resist, Marcus says quietly. We did what we did. Now we'll face what comes next. The handcuffs close around Marcus's wrists with a sound like chains rattling, like doors slamming shut. As they lead him toward the door, Dorothy Johnson grabs her grandson's arm. Why? She whispers. Just tell me why. Marcus looks at her. The grandmother who raised him, the woman who survived losing her husband, losing her son, and now has to watch her grandsons destroy themselves over pride and a leather jacket. "Because I'm my father's son," Marcus says, "he taught me never to let anyone disrespect me." "Your father died with his code," Dorothy says, her voice breaking. "And now you're going to live without your freedom because you followed it. That jacket your father left you. It burned in that fire, Marcus. It's ash. Everything you did, every person you killed, it was all for something that doesn't even exist anymore." They lead Marcus away, lead Terrell away, leave Dorothy Johnson standing in her doorway, watching police cars drive away with both her grandsons in the back, knowing she'll probably never see them free again. By evening Tuesday, the news has spread through West Englewood like wildfire. 11 dead. The Johnson brothers responsible. The whole neighborhood has an opinion, and almost none of them agree. Some say Marcus and Terrell are monsters who murdered innocent people in cold blood. Others say they were men driven to desperate measures by disrespect in a culture where disrespect can get you killed. The families of the victims demand justice. 11 families destroyed. One victim's mother stands outside the burned building holding a sonogram photo, the baby that will never be born. Another father holds his son's business textbooks from the 2 years of college he'd managed before money ran out. At Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church, Pastor Thompson struggles through Tuesday evening service. "We ask why," he says, his voice breaking. "Why this violence? Why this loss? Why couldn't young men resolve their differences without bloodshed?" He has no answers, just grief and the terrible knowledge that his congregation has been cut in half by one night when honor became murder and respect became ash. The neighborhood splits down the middle. Some understand Marcus's code, even if they can't condone his actions. Others see only 11 lives ended, 11 families destroyed, and demand the maximum punishment. And everyone knows that whatever verdict eventually comes, West Englewood will never heal completely from Valentine's Day 1994, when 2 brothers decided that a leather jacket was worth more than 11 human lives, and the fire they lit burned away any chance of redemption for anyone involved. The trial of Marcus Anthony Johnson and Terrell James Johnson began in September of 1994 in a Cook County courtroom that felt more like a theater of broken dreams than a place of justice. The case had attracted national attention, reporters cramming into every available seat, cameras positioned to capture every moment of what prosecutors called one of the most heinous acts of premeditated violence in Chicago's history. 43 combined charges of first-degree murder and aggravated arson. 11 victims whose names would be read aloud so many times they became a litany of loss. The prosecution had everything they needed. Physical evidence linking the brothers to the scene, shell casings from the padlocks, gasoline residue that matched purchases at 3 different locations, witnesses who'd seen 2 men matching their descriptions near the building just before the fire started. The defense attorneys, 2 overworked public defenders who looked exhausted before they even began, faced an impossible task. How do you defend the indefensible? How do you explain to 12 jurors that burning 11 people alive could somehow be justified by a stolen jacket and wounded pride? They tried. Lord knows they tried. They painted a picture of young men raised in a war zone, taught by their father that honor was everything, trapped in a neighborhood where showing weakness meant death. They called witnesses who testified about Southside violence, about the code that governed street life, about how being disrespected and not responding could get you eliminated. But the prosecution destroyed that argument methodically, professionally, without mercy. Temporary insanity doesn't involve 2 weeks of planning. Doesn't involve purchasing chains at hardware stores. Doesn't involve surveillance and mapping escape routes. This wasn't madness driven by sudden rage. This was premeditated mass murder dressed up in the language of honor and respect. The jury, and 12 Chicagoans who understood urban violence but hadn't lived the specific pressures of West Englewood, deliberated for 19 hours over 3 days. You could feel the weight of those hours in the courtroom. Families of the victims sat on one side. Dorothy Johnson sat alone on the other, praying for grandsons she knew were already lost. On September 28, 1994, they returned their verdict. The foreman, a middle-aged black man who looked like he hadn't slept in days, stood up and spoke the words that would echo through that courtroom forever. Guilty. All charges. Both defendants. Marcus showed no emotion when the verdict was read. No tears, no shock, just a slight nod, as if he'd known from the moment he struck that match exactly where this path would lead. Terrell broke down completely, his sobs filling the courtroom, but Marcus remained stone-faced, accepting his fate with the same cold calculation he'd brought to planning the fire. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a woman in her 60s, who'd seen every form of human darkness the city could produce, looked down at the brothers with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so heavily mixed with disgust. Marcus Anthony Johnson, life in prison without possibility of parole. Terrell James Johnson, life in prison without possibility of parole. The gavel came down like a door slamming shut on 2 lives that had already ended the night they decided a leather jacket was worth more than human lives. Marcus served 30 years in Menard Correctional Center in southern Illinois. During that time, he became something nobody expected. A teacher, a mentor. He worked in the prison library, helping other inmates prepare for their GED exams, teaching them to read, showing them that there were ways to solve problems that didn't involve violence. Guards said he was one of the most disciplined inmates they'd ever known. Methodical, routine-oriented, almost peaceful. He never talked about what he'd done, never tried to justify it, never claimed to be anything other than what he was. A man who'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed and was spending the rest of his life paying for that decision. Dorothy Johnson visited every month for 18 years, taking the Greyhound bus from Chicago to the prison, a 6-hour journey each way. She never missed a visit until her health began failing. During those visits, they'd sit across from each other at a metal table, speaking quietly about everything except the thing that had brought them there. She'd tell him about the neighborhood, about who'd died, who'd moved away, who'd made something of themselves despite everything. He'd ask about her health, about the church, about whether she was eating enough. They'd hold hands across the table, this old woman and her grandson who'd become a stranger to himself. Dorothy died of complications from diabetes in 2012, 86 years old. Marcus wasn't allowed to attend her funeral. The prison chaplain said Marcus didn't cry when he received the news. He just sat in his cell for 3 days, refused meals, and when he finally emerged, he'd aged 10 years and 72 hours. On March 3, 2024, at 57 years old, Marcus Johnson died of a heart attack in the prison infirmary at 4:23 in the morning. The chaplain on duty reported that Marcus's last coherent words were simple and devastating. "Tell Terrell I'm sorry. Tell him it wasn't worth it." Whether he truly believed that in his final moment or was just trying to give his brother some peace, nobody knows. He was buried in the prison cemetery with a simple marker. Marcus A. Johnson, 1966 to 2024. No mention of father, brother, son, just dates marking the beginning and end of a life that had transformed from honest work to unthinkable violence over a principle that died in flames along with 11 people. Terrell remains incarcerated at Stateville Correctional Center outside Chicago. He's 53 now, parole denied in 2014 and 2024. Unlike his brother, Terrell never found peace in prison. He's been written up dozens of times for fighting, spent years in segregation, struggles with depression and nightmares that never end. In a rare 2019 interview with a criminal justice reform advocate, Terrell spoke about the weight he carries every day. Every night I see their faces. Every night I hear them screaming. Marcus told me it would be worth it, that we'd get respect. But I ain't got respect. I just got nightmares in a cell I'll die in. Shanice, Terrell's girlfriend, tried to stay connected for the first year. She visited 3 times, then stopped coming. She married someone else in 1997, had 2 children, moved to Atlanta. When contacted by reporters on the 20th anniversary of the fire, she declined to comment except to say, "That was a different life. I'm not that person anymore." The families of the 11 victims scattered across Chicago and beyond, each carrying their own grief and questions that would never be answered. Some moved away entirely, unable to stay in a neighborhood that held so much pain. Others remained, turning their loss into activism, into programs designed to keep other young people from making the same deadly choices. One victim's mother created a scholarship fund for nursing students. Another father started a community center focused on conflict resolution. Small lights in enormous darkness, ways to make meaning from meaninglessness, to build something positive from the ashes of tragedy. The building at the address where 11 people died was demolished in 1995. Today, it's an empty lot surrounded by chain-link fence, weeds growing through cracked concrete. There's no memorial, no plaque, no historical marker explaining what happened there. The city just moved on, as cities do, covering scars with layers of normalcy until they almost disappear. Children play on the sidewalk where bodies fell. Families walk past the lot where 11 people burned alive, completely unaware of the history beneath their feet. Life continued as it always does, relentless and indifferent, moving forward whether we're ready or not. Detective Raymond Walsh, who investigated the case, retired from the Chicago Police Department in 2015 after 37 years of service. In a 2020 podcast interview about the case, he spoke about the contradictions that still haunt him. Technically, Marcus and Terrell Johnson were mass murderers. Legally, there's no question. But morally, it's more complicated. They grew up in a place where disrespect could get you killed, where letting someone disrespect you marked you as prey. They were following rules they'd been taught since childhood, the same rules their father followed until it got him shot. The law says one thing, the street says another. That contradiction is something I've had to live with every day since February 15th, 1994. West Englewood changed after that Valentine's Day night, but not in the ways people hoped. The immediate aftermath saw increased police presence, community meetings, promises of intervention programs. Politicians made speeches about the need for investment in forgotten neighborhoods, about breaking cycles of violence, about giving young people alternatives to the streets. But the change wasn't permanent. Within 5 years, budget cuts eliminated most programs. Violence continued. Disrespect still demanded answers. Young men still died over principles that didn't survive them. The code that Marcus followed, the same code that got his father killed, persisted because it emerges from conditions that haven't fundamentally changed. Poverty, lack of opportunity, broken families, communities where the only currency that matters is respect because everything else has been taken away. These are the breeding grounds for violence, the places where honor and horror become indistinguishable, where a stolen jacket can somehow justify 11 funerals. The story of the Johnson brothers has no heroes. It has 2 young men who loved each other more than their own futures, and 11 people who made choices, some thoughtless, some cruel, some simply human, that set tragedy in motion. It has a system that failed at every level, a neighborhood abandoned by investment, schools that couldn't educate, police who couldn't protect, families broken by poverty and violence. Most disturbing of all, it has a code of honor so rigid it made mass murder seem like the only response to disrespect. A code that transformed ordinary working men into killers, that turned brothers into monsters, that burned away any chance of redemption for everyone it touched. The uncomfortable truth is that Marcus and Terrell Johnson were both murderers and victims. Victims of a culture that taught them violence was the answer to disrespect, that honor was worth more than life, that walking away from a fight made you less than a man. But they were also killers who chose to eliminate 11 people rather than accept the loss of a leather jacket and the blow to their pride that came with it. 30 years have passed since that Valentine's Day night when two brothers decided that respect was worth more than 11 human lives. The fire they lit didn't just consume a building or end lives, it burned away any possibility that honor and violence could coexist without destroying everything they touch. Marcus and Terrell Johnson followed a code their father taught them, a code that demanded blood for disrespect. And in the end, that code consumed them just as completely as the flames consumed their victims. Today, an empty lot stands where 11 young people died, unmarked and forgotten, by a city that has moved on to newer tragedies, newer cycles of violence that follow the same deadly logic. The leather jacket that started it all burned to ash along with everything else, leaving only the question that haunts every neighborhood where respect is the only currency that matters. When does standing up for yourself become mass murder? And how many more people have to die before we understand that some codes cost more than they're worth?